Welcome back to the Soft Care Zone podcast. And this is the final episode in our series on workplace burnout and psychological safety. Over the past 4 episodes, we've talked about the hidden costs of burnout, what happens when leaders burn out themselves, the 2.73 million Australians about to walk out, and how to have that conversation when your organisation isn't having it yet. We've diagnosed the problem, created urgency, and given you the tools to start creating change. But today, I want to do something different. Today, we're going to talk about what you're actually working towards. Because if all we do is talk about preventing burnout, we're aiming too low. So this episode is called Beyond Survival Mode, what thriving actually means. And here's what I want you to understand. Thriving isn't about the absence of burnout. It's not just getting to the point where people aren't actively suffering. It's something much bigger, much richer, and much more powerful than that. So let's talk about what's actually possible when you create workplaces where people don't just survive, but genuinely thrive. First, let's be clear about what we're not talking about. Thriving isn't about being happy all the time. Work is work. There will be challenges, frustrations, difficult days. That's normal and it's okay. It's not about eliminating all stress. Some stress is actually good. It's what helps us grow, meet challenges, and achieve things we're proud of. We're not aiming for a stress-free workplace because that would be boring and stagnant. It's not everyone loving their job every single day. That's unrealistic. But it's about people being able to do meaningful work without sacrificing their health and well-being in the process. And it's definitely not about ping pong tables, free snacks, or superficial perks. Those things are nice, but they're not what creates thriving. They're often just window dressing that organizations use to avoid addressing deeper issues. So if this is what thriving isn't, what is it? Thriving is when people have the energy and capacity to do their best work, not because they're running on adrenaline or pushing through exhaustion, but because they're genuinely resourced and engaged. It's when people feel psychologically safe. They can speak up, take risks, admit mistakes, ask for help, and bring their whole selves to work without fear of judgment or retribution. It's when work feels sustainable. People can maintain their performance without burning out. They finish their workday with something left in the tank, and they sustain this peace not just for weeks or months, but for years. It's when people experience growth and development. They're learning, being challenged in good ways, developing new skills, and seeing opportunities for their future. It's when people feel connected to their colleagues, to the work itself, to the organization's missions and values. There's a sense of meaning and purpose, not just a paycheck. And here's the big one. It's when people's work enhances their life rather than just consuming it. They have time and energy for relationships, hobbies, rest, and whatever else matters to them outside of work. That's what we're aiming for. Not perfection, but genuine thriving. Let me share a framework that helps make this concrete. Think about thriving in terms of an energy equation. Every day, you've got inputs and outputs, work tasks, interactions, decisions, emotional labor. These are outputs that drain your energy. Rest, breaks, meaningful work, supportive relationships, autonomy, recognition. These are the inputs that replenish energy. In survival mode, outputs massively exceed inputs. You're spending more energy than what you're getting back. You run a deficit every single day. And you might be able to sustain that for a while by drawing on reserves, but eventually those reserves deplete. That is burnout. In thriving mode, there's balance. Sometimes you have high output days, but there are also inputs that replenish you. The equation balances over time. You're not constantly in deficit. And here's what's possible when you really get this right. You can actually create net positive days, days where the energy you gain from meaningful work, from connection, from growth, from being in flow exceeds even the energy you spend. Those days leave you feeling energized, not depleted. And that's what thriving looks like in practice. So let's get concrete. What are the characteristics of workplaces where people thrive? They protect time and attention. There aren't endless meetings. People have blocks of uninterrupted time for deep work. Boundaries around after hours communication are real and respected. The expectation isn't constant availability. It's focused quality work during reasonable hours. They distribute workload thoroughly. No one person is chronically overloaded while others have capacity. When someone's at capacity, that's taken seriously and addressed, not ignored or dismissed. Deadlines are realistic, or if they're tight, there's acknowledgement and support. They build in recovery. This isn't just about annual leave. This is about regular breaks during the day, sustainable pacing of projects, recognition that intense periods need to be followed by lighter periods. They understand that you can't run at 100% intensity constantly. They create psychological safety. People can raise concerns without fear. Mistakes are treated as learning opportunities, not punishable offenses. Different perspectives are valued. Vulnerability is okay. You don't have to perform perfection constantly. They support autonomy. People have genuine control over how they do their work. They're not micromanaged. They're trusted to make decisions within their domain. They have input into goals and processes and not just instructions to follow. They recognize the value of contributions, not just financially, though fair pay matters, but also through acknowledgement, appreciation, opportunities for growth, and treating people like the valuable humans that they are. They accommodate whole lives. They recognize that people have responsibilities and interests outside of work. Flexibility isn't a perk you have to earn. It's built into how things operate. Working parents and carers are supported, not merely tolerated. They invest in growth. People aren't just cogs in a machine. There's investment in their development, their skills, their future. They can see a path forward. They live their values. If they say they value well-being, that's reflected in decisions, policies, and leadership behavior. There's alignment between what's said and what's done. Let me paint a picture of what thriving looks like from an individual perspective. Imagine waking up on a Monday morning, and while you might not be jumping for joy about it being Monday, you're not filled with dread. You know what you're working on. You feel prepared. You have clarity about priorities. You arrive at work, whether that's an office, your home, or a client site. You have some control over your morning. Maybe you take 15 minutes to plan your day, get organized, have a coffee. You're not immediately drowning. Your workload is challenging, but manageable. You know what success looks like. You have the resources and support that you need. When you hit obstacles, you can ask for help without feeling like you're admitting failure. You have meetings, but they're purposeful. They start and end on time. You're not sitting in back-to-back video calls for 8 hours, feeling like your brain is melting. When you take an actual lunch break, you're not sitting at your desk while working. That actual break means you step away, rest your mind, maybe connect with a colleague or go for a walk. You do work that matters. You can see the impact of what you're doing. You're not just completing tasks for the sake of ticking boxes. There's meaning and purpose to it. When you finish your workday, you're tired in a good way. You've worked hard, but you're not completely depleted. You have energy for your life outside of work. You can be present for your family, engage in your hobbies, and rest properly. And when challenges come up, because they will, you have support. Your manager checks in, not to micromanage, but to genuinely see how you're doing and what you need. Your colleagues have your back. The organizational culture makes it okay to say, I'm struggling with this, without the fear. That's what thriving looks like day to day. Now, I know some people listening might be thinking, this sounds like a fantasy, or is it even possible in my industry? Or that we're just too busy to operate like this? And I want to address this directly. We've collectively normalised survival mode. We've accepted that work has to be exhausting, that burnout is inevitable, that you have to sacrifice your well-being for success. But that's not universal truth. That's a choice we've made, often without realising that we're making it. And here's what's wild. The organisations that operate in thriving mode aren't less productive. Often, they're more productive because people who are resourced, engaged, and supported do better work than people who are burnt out and just trying to survive. There's a prevailing belief that if you're not pushing people to their limits, you're being soft or uncommitted to excellence. But that's false logic. Sustainable high performance is actually more impressive than burnout-driven short-term intensity. Think about elite athletes. They don't train at maximum intensity 24/7. They have periodized, intense training followed by recovery. They prioritize sleep, nutrition, mental health. They know that sustainable excellence requires taking care of the whole system. Why would we expect workplaces to be any different? Let's talk business cases for a minute, because some leaders need to hear this. Organizations where people thrive have lower turnover. They're not constantly recruiting and training replacements. They're not losing institutional knowledge and having to rebuild team dynamics. They have higher engagement, which correlates with productivity, quality, customer satisfaction, and profitability. Engaged employees do better work. It's not complicated. They have less sick leave and fewer compensation claims. When people aren't running themselves into the ground, their health, physical and mental, holds up better. They attract better talent. In a competitive market, being known as a place where people can actually thrive is a massive advantage. Your recruitment is easier and your candidate quality is higher. They innovate more effectively. Innovation requires creative thinking, which requires mental space and energy. Burnt out people don't innovate. They just survive. And they build stronger reputations, both as employers and as organizations. Your customers and clients can tell the difference between working with engaged people versus burnt out people just going through the motions. The ROI is here. You have to be willing to measure beyond just immediate short-term output. Creating workplaces where people thrive requires some specific things from leadership. It requires genuine commitment, not just lip service. You can't just say that you value well-being while continuing to operate in ways that burn people out. Your actions have to match your words. It requires investment, not necessarily huge amounts of money, but investment of time, attention, and resources. You might need training for managers. You might need to adjust workload distribution. You might need to implement better systems and processes. It requires patience. Cultural change doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to flip a switch and suddenly have a thriving workplace. It's an ongoing process of iteration and improvement. It requires leadership modeling. If your executives are burnt out and working unsustainable hours, that sets the tone for everyone. Leaders have to embody the culture they want to create. It requires listening. You need to genuinely hear what people are telling you about their experience, and you need to act on what you hear, not just acknowledge it and move on. It requires measurement. You need to track not just productivity metrics, but well-being metrics, engagement scores, turnover rates, sick leave patterns, feedback on regular check-ins. What gets measured gets managed, and it requires courage. Courage to do things differently than your competitors. Courage to prioritize sustainability over short-term intensity. Courage to make decisions that might not show immediate ROI, but will absolutely pay off long-term. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. When you create workplaces where people thrive, the benefits extend way beyond the workplace. When people finish their workday with energy left, they show up better in their relationships. They're more present with their partners and kids. They have capacity for friendship, community involvement, hobbies that bring them joy. When people aren't chronically stressed and burnt out, their physical health improves. Better sleep, lower blood pressure, stronger immune systems, reduced risk of serious health conditions. Their mental health improves too. Less anxiety, less depression, more resilience, greater life satisfaction. And here's the big picture. When we collectively shift from survival mode to thriving mode, we create a healthier society. We reduce healthcare costs. We improve outcomes for children who have parents with capacity to be present. We strengthen communities. This isn't just about work. It's about the quality of life. So where do we go from here? We've spent 5 episodes talking about burnout, its costs, its impacts, how to address it. And now we've talked about what's possible beyond just preventing burnout. The question is, what will you do with this information? You're at a fork in the road. You can listen to these episodes and think, yeah, that's interesting, and then go back to business as usual. Or you can decide that you're going to be part of creating something better. If you're in leadership, you can choose to take this seriously, to make psychological safety and sustainable work practices actually priorities, not just things that you mention in company values. You can start asking different questions, not just how do we get more output, but how do we create sustainable high performance? Not just why is turnover so high, but what are we doing that's driving people away? You can model different behaviors, take your breaks, use your leave, having boundaries around after hours work, talking openly about the importance of well-being. You can invest in structured support because creating thriving workplaces isn't something that most leaders have to be trained to do. Getting expert guidance, frameworks, and support makes change so much more achievable. If you're not in formal leadership, but you have influence, maybe you're a middle manager or a team leader, you can create pockets of thriving within your span of control. You can protect your team's time and energy. You can advocate upward for system changes. You can model healthy work practices. If you're an individual contributor, you can set boundaries for yourself. You can advocate for what you need. You can support colleagues who are struggling. And you can make informed decisions about whether your current organization is a place where you can thrive or whether you need to look elsewhere. Whatever your role, you have agency here. You have choices. Imagine arriving at work or logging in from your remote location and feeling genuinely okay about it, not dreading it, not already exhausted before you start. Just, okay, ready. Imagine doing work that matters with people you respect in an environment that supports you rather than depletes you. Imagine finishing your workday, feeling accomplished, not destroyed, tired from good work, but not burnt out from the impossible demands. Imagine having energy for your life, being present with the people that you love, pursuing interests that bring you joy, actually resting when you rest. Imagine working in an organization where speaking up is safe, where mistakes are learning opportunities, where people are treated like humans instead of resources to be extracted. Imagine sustainable success, not burning bright for a few years and then crashing, but building a career where you can maintain for decades because it doesn't cost you everything. That's the vision. It's not a fantasy. It exists. There are organizations operating this way right now. There are leaders who have made these choices. There are teams who've created this reality. The question is, will yours be one of them? If you're listening to this and thinking, yes, this is what I want for my organization, but you're not sure how to make it happen, that's exactly what I do to help organizations. Through the self-care zone, I work with organizations to move from survival mode to thriving mode. Whether you're just starting to recognize that you have a problem or you're ready for a comprehensive cultural transformation, there are programs designed to meet you where you are. The Foundation program provides monthly sessions that keep well-being front of mind and build consistent, healthy habits across your team. These are practical, sector-specific sessions that fit into your busy workdays and provide immediate, actionable strategies. The Growth Program offers quarterly half-day workshops over 2 years that build deep skills in resilience, pressure management, boundaries, communication, and sustainable productivity. Teams leave each workshop with concrete tools that they can implement immediately. And the Culture of Care Partnership is comprehensive 2-year consultancy that works with your leadership team, managers, and staff to embed well-being in every aspect of your organization. This includes leadership training, policy alignment, staff co-design, regular workshops, and measurable data tracking. All of these programs are specifically designed for the community services or educational environments, developed by someone with almost 20 years of frontline leadership experience in the sector. So the content speaks your language and addresses your actual challenges. They also directly support your work health and safety compliance obligations around psychosocial hazards, managing workloads, supporting staff, reducing cognitive overload, building healthy workplace relationships, and preventing burnout. But more than compliance, these programs help you create workplaces where people genuinely thrive. If you want to explore what this could look like for your organization, book a discovery call. We'll talk about where you're at, what you're hoping to achieve, and what kind of support would actually help. So reach out to me. Send me an email to info@theselfcarezone.com or visit theselfcarezone.com, and the details will be in the show notes. Because here's what I know. You wouldn't have listened to 5 episodes about workplace burnout if you didn't care about this. You wouldn't be here right now if you are okay with survival mode being the standard. You want something better for yourself, for your team, for your organization. And something better is possible, but it requires choosing it. It requires commitment. It requires action. So the question is, are you ready to move beyond survival mode and create workplaces where people actually thrive? So that's where we're going to leave it today. Not just for this episode, but for this series. We've talked about the costs of burnout, the crisis that's coming, the conversations that need to happen, and the vision of what's possible. Now it's over to you. If these episodes have resonated, please share them. Send them to the leaders in your organization. Post them in your professional networks. Forward them to that friend who's burning out in their job. And if you're ready to take action, if you're ready to be part of creating workplaces where people don't just survive, but genuinely thrive, reach out. Book that discovery call. Start the conversation. Because the future of work doesn't have to be burnout. We can create something better. We should create something better. And it starts with people like you deciding that survival mode isn't good enough anymore. So thanks for listening to this series. Take care of yourselves and each other. And here's to creating workplaces where we all can thrive.